What's up, everybody? Skyhook Garage here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to do the pin install kit for the tumbler on the Panniers for the 2020 Africa Twin. Now, this video is going to be good for the Pannier lock cylinders, and it also is going to be good for the ignition lock cylinder if you ever really have to do one of those. And also, this is just a good 101 on how these lock cylinders end up getting built and pinned out and stuff. After doing one of these, it is extremely similar to GM's style of lock cylinder. And to be honest with you, other than a mill cut key, if you have a key with the grooves on the outside, even though Honda has the center spline that they work with it, without that center spline, this is still essentially just a knife toothed key instead of the mill cut like some of the German cars like the Volkswagen, the Audis, and the Mercedes. But anyway, this video is going to be good for showing you guys how to install the pins. And let's get started here. So this right here is going to be the cylinder interset kit 08M70-MJE-D03. Now this is the box that it comes in. You will need 3 of these allegedly from Honda. And like I said in the other 2 Pannier videos, I got these kits already in the Panniers, and then I ended up ordering 3 extra ones. So I have 3 extras that I don't need at the moment, and they ended up coming loose in the Panniers. Now this is what's in that box, and it's also what was in the Pannier when I received them. You have the lock cylinder over here. You have your A and B primary initial pins here. Then you have your different toothed pins that are going to go in the center of the key tumbler. So you have your X1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 pins here. Okay, there is enough pins theoretically. There should be enough pins to do an entire key, but each of the X's, you need 8 pins, and each of the X's only has 6 in each of the numbers, but we'll get to that in a second. Then you have the pin springs here. Okay, they got a couple extra in there for you too. And then you have the locking pin or locking paw that I'll show once the cylinder is completed. And then you have the only 2 of the bigger springs here. Those bigger springs are going to be for the locking paw, and then they're also going to be for either the A or B primary. You're only going to use one of these, but like I said, shortly here we'll explain everything for you. Now, with the grease, got a tube of grease here along with the MSDS sheet for the grease. That's not directions. I thought it was, but it's not. It's just telling you how this little tube of grease causes cancer in the state of California. So that's the kit. What I suggest doing is, first things first, you're going to cut the kit open across the top, and you're going to take out one of each of the X pins. Okay, you're going to take out both of the A and B. Okay, those are these guys right here. All right, then you're going to take one of the X's out of each of the 6 spots. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you have 1 locking paw. They give you 2 here, but you only need 1. And then pull out one of the 2 big springs on the right, all the way on the right, and then take out 1 or 2 of the little guys here. All right. So once you get all those things out and onto the bench, you'll be able to start building the cylinder. Okay, so first things first, there are 2 sides to this lock cylinder, okay? And what I suggest you guys do first is you're gonna keep the orientation of which way the key goes in from right to left or left to right, whichever way you wanna start with it. That part's irrelevant. But you're gonna be working on both sides of the lock cylinder. You have pins that need to go in the top of it, and then you also have pins that need to go into the bottom of it, okay? Now, the orientation of the lock cylinder, top to bottom, or at least the way that I'm going to describe this is, on the top of the lock cylinder, anywhere that you see a roundish hole, right here, 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 and then over here, okay, those are going to be where the springs go. And that's going to tell you the orientation of each of the pins that go into the lock cylinder. Now, if you flip the lock cylinder over, you do not have the circles for this one or this one on either end. But you still have 1, 2, 3, 4 here on the back side of it. So we're going to call this the top, where all 6 of these pins the springs will go in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then the bottom is just going to have the 4 center pins. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so on the piece of paper, you're going to want to draw 6 lines. Okay, the 6th one is irrelevant. This line here is irrelevant, but what you're looking for is the key's going to go in this way. All right, just like this, just like this. All right, and you're going to have on your first one here, this one right here is going to be either the A or the B primary pin. All right, so this is A or B. Then your 4 in the center here will be your X's. They're going to be one of these 6 pins here. And then your end one here is going to be the locking paw, which is this guy here, the locking pin. That can't change. The 2 of them that you get in the kit are exactly the same. So this is always going to be the locking one. So we'll just label that L for now. All right, so inserting the key in, all right, you're going to be doing the inserting of the key back and forth on each of these pins. So the springs, like I said, go into these holes here. So we're going to start with the very first one, which is this guy right here. Now, as you can see on the back side of the key here, that's where the bottom portion of the primary pin is going to protrude through. There's not going to be any spring on that side, so the spring's only going to be on this side. Now, your big spring here, you have 2 of those, and then you have a bunch of the little pins here. So the big spring pin is going to go in for the primary, and then the other one's going to go in for the locking paw. Don't worry about the locking paw for right now. It's going to be the last pin you work on. So you're going to work from the beginning of the key cylinder all the way to the left in the top. So you'll figure out A or B on this one. Then you're going to figure out X1 through 6 either on that, X1 through 6 on that, X1 through 6 on this, X1 through 6 on this. So we'll put a spring, put the big spring down into the hole here, all right? It'll drop down in, all right? Then you're going to pick either A or B. Now on all these pins, you have the shoulder of the pin right here, okay? And you can see that you have the shoulder here. Each of the X's has a shoulder here and here. Each and every one of them has a shoulder for where the spring rides. That portion is always going to be the same. On the primary ones, the center portion of the key, where the key goes, is what's going to be different. So you start with that first slot. You get your spring dropped in the hole there. And then you're going to put your primary key in. So we're going to start with the A. And you can see on the keys that they're labeled A and B. 5A, 5B. So this is 5B. It doesn't matter A or B. Just start with one of the 2 of them. All right, you're going to drop that guy into there. Make sure that the spring doesn't fall out, and then also it grabs that little shoulder. All right, so there you can see that it's sticking out right now. All right, so you're going to take the key, insert it carefully. All right, now we're going to look how flush it is. All right, it looks like it's a little bit down, and then if you flip it over to the other side, wipe away any grease that might be in there, that looks pretty flush. That doesn't look too bad at all. Now, anytime you put a pin in to test it and you go to remove the key to get the pin back out, make sure you put your finger over the top here. That way the pin doesn't go flying as you remove the key. All right, so let's see what A looks like real quick. You always want to test out, even if you think you got the right one, especially on the primary, there's only 2 of them, try the other one just to see how it goes. I can pick it up. All right, so this is A. We're going to put A into the slot. All right, so now you can see with A, it protrudes out the bottom too much, and it's really recessed in there on the top. So A is not the pin you want. Whenever you insert the key into the cylinder, you want to look for a completely flush pin in there. So you can see how that one's recessed on the top and it sticks out on the bottom. Theoretically, this key does not fit this pin. So the first primary pin, just be careful because you can drop these springs out if you're fumbling around with the lock cylinder. The first pin is going to be X or I'm sorry, it's going to be the 5B. So right down over here, 5B. Okay, so it's going to be the same exact thing for the rest of the pins. We'll start with 5B up top there. Now, working with the top one, we've already done the primary slot here. So we're going to move on to the first. We'll do the top rows here. It doesn't matter which ones you do, what order you do these in. It just matters that you do them one at a time and you write them down here so you have them for record. So we'll start with this first guy right here. Now we use the big springs for the primary key, primary pin. So we'll put that guy up there with the B. All right, now we're going to use one of these little guys. Same exact thing, you're going to drop it into the hole. Get it started in the hole. Now, you can't put it down into the slot here. It's only going to kind of fit into that hole. So once you get it started, it'll drop down into the slot that it's for. So you either need X1 or X6. Basically, all it is just positioning. So I suggest always starting with 4 or 3 and then working your way up or down from there. So we'll start with 4. Now the tricky part with this is anytime you put a key in, a pin into the cylinder here, you always want the flat facing outwards so it grabs that spring. So we'll drop this guy in there, and sometimes you can see how the key kind of looks like it's at a funky angle. It should be standing up more straight. If you tilt the bottom, since we're trying to put the pins in this side, if you tilt the cylinder to a little bit of an angle, the key will kind of fall down and fall into where it's supposed to go. If you're not sure whether or not the key is or the pin is into the cylinder properly, you can push down on it a little bit. You can feel it. You can feel the spring pressure pushing it back up. And then also if you go to try to insert the key and it doesn't go in and it gets jammed, then the pin's probably not in there straight. But once you can feel it springing against that spring that's down in the slot, you can try to stick the key in. Now sometimes it helps to assist the key going in. All right, so it might be a little bit difficult to see, but you can kind of see how that pin, which is right about here, okay, you can see how it kind of sticks up a little bit. Now if we flip it to the other side, the bottom portion of the pin where it sticks through, it's right here. You can see it's kind of recessed in a little bit. All right, so the rule of thumb that I found is that if the pin is sticking up, you want to go up in numbers. So let's take out the 4, try the 5. Okay. Now let's focus. All right, so now you can see that that pin is really flush. Nice and flush there on that side, nice and flush on that side. What you can do is, even if you're a little bit concerned about it, whether or not it's the proper pin, you can go up to a 6 and see what a 6 looks like. 6 is probably going to be recessed in. Now I know this is a 5 for fact because I've already done one. Write down X5, and we'll move on to the next one. Now you're going to flip over the lock cylinder, dump that pin out, and move the pin to the next hole, which will be to the left. And all you're going to do, you're just going to do this for every single one of them. Start with 3 or 4. Insert the key, see how it looks. If the pin's sticking up, go up a number. If the pin's sticking down from the top, you're going to want to go down a number. So, like you can see what I've just done there, I've jammed the pin in there. You might need a little bit of needle nose pliers or pair of tweezers to pop it out of there. There we go. Shouldn't be tight in there. Like I said, you just kind of gently tap it in, make sure it's on spring pressure, good to go. Try the key. Okay. So now you can see how that pin is very far stuck out of the cylinder there. All right, so it's way up, so we need to go way up. So I'm gonna, if it's really protruded out of there, I'd skip 1 or 2 of them. I'm gonna go, that's a 3. I'm probably gonna go directly to a 6 just to see how it looks. So as you can see, nice and flush. All right, so this one's X6. All right, and then you're just going to do it for the rest of them on the top of the key. All right, so once you have everything done on the one side of the lock cylinder, you're going to flip the lock cylinder over, and you're going to do the same thing with the other 4 holes here. This one, this one, this one, and that one. Again, you can make another butt diagram for you up at the top here. You only need 4 slots. Just make sure you have the orientation of the key going into the key cylinder with your diagram. And then do the same thing with this side with the 6 pins in the middle. Okay, now that you have your answer key for the bottom and the top of the lock cylinder, sorry, for the top and the bottom of the lock cylinder, now you can start doing the full install of all the pins. So we're going to start on the big side, which is going to be the top with the primary 5B pin and then also the locking paw at the end there. All right, so you should have a total of 4, 4, 5, 6. So you should have a total of 10 pins. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So any extra pins that you don't need that don't come up on your list, just get them out of the way so you don't lose anything. Now, the kit's going to have, like I said before, you're going to need 8 of the springs and then 2 of the big springs here for the locking paw and also the primary key, the first pin that goes into the lock cylinder. You have extra small springs, but you don't have extra big springs, so make sure you don't lose either of those 2. Those are the only 2 that come in the kit. The little springs, they give you a bunch of extra ones. I don't know why they didn't give extra big ones, but it is what it is. So my suggestion is get all the springs started first, all right? So like I said, look for the holes. If you're confused about top or bottom, look for the round holes. Those are where the springs go. So we'll drop the big springs in first. One in the front, one in the rear. All right, and then 4 of the little guys in each of their respective holes. Now before you do this, probably be a good idea to grab that tube of grease and pierce a hole in it and get it ready for you so you don't have to try to fumble this lock cylinder like I'm about to. But it should stay where it's at. Set it down, get the tube of grease, all right, unscrew it, and then the cap has a little pierce. You're just going to push it onto the end. Now the tube's open. There's the grease right there. All right, now you don't have to go crazy with a lot of grease. You're going to be greasing it from both ends. So I suggest just stay in the middle. You're going to kind of push it up against the lock cylinder and just give it a gentle squeeze. You see a little bit of grease go into each of the slots. So you'll do one for the primary, a little bit for the first key going across the top, another one there, another one on the bottom key, and the final key in the back side. All right, so now what the grease is going to do is not only is it going to lubricate the key sliding in and out of this thing, but it's also going to keep these pins in place as you flip this over to put the other pins in on the back side of the lock cylinder. So starting with the primary one, we got 5B, so always double check all the pins before you put them in. Make sure the keys are proper, make sure they're the right ones as you're putting them in. So X5. And also, of course, make sure that they're springy a little bit. Make sure they're seated in there properly. There we go. All right, now we install everything. Put the key in. Take a look at all of those flush, nice, flush, smooth pins on top of that cylinder there. Nothing looks out of the ordinary. Everything looks like it's smooth and flush on the back side. Good to go. So you're going to do the same exact thing on the back side here. Again, you'll have to remove the key. All right, and then the grease should keep those pins in place. Not saying they're going to stay in permanently, but in the meantime, while you're doing this, you'll be able to keep them in there with the grease while you flip it over. All right, once the springs are started, do the tube of grease on each of the 4 of those holes. You can put a little bit more on the other spots also if you'd like to, but there should be plenty of grease already in there. All right, once everything is installed, put the key in. Give it a quick wipe around where the pins stick in and out. And just do a good look over. Make sure everything looks good and flush. Again, don't worry about this last guy here. This is the pin that keeps the cylinder into the pannier. Everything looks nice and flush. Like I said, if you put this in there and one of these pins is not properly seated and it's not the right number, you're going to be boned, and then your pannier is not going to unlock or lock, and then the cylinder is going to be stuck in there. Okay, so inside the hole there, you can see that the pannier, when it's unlocked before you put the cylinder in here, you can see there's a little rectangular piece that's right about in there, right about there. And that rectangular piece matches this piece right here. All right, you can see the hole on the left side of this, and the hole is also offset on that rectangular slot in there. So essentially, you want the hole, you want this hole here to be towards the left, so the orientation is going to be like this. Okay, the locking pawl is going to be right here, and it's going to go up against the inside of the cylinder. Now, the locking paw is spring-loaded a little bit, so you can kind of put the key at an angle like this, get that locking paw started on this lip right in here, and then once it gets started, kind of straighten the key out a little bit, and there you go. Now the cylinder's starting to go in. Push it all the way in. And we're locked in. Release is locked. Top pannier, case open is locked. Put the key in. Now we're unlocked. Now it unlocks, and the pannier will unlock from the bike now. That's basically how to do it. Do that to the other 2 key cylinders. Put them in on the bike. Again, I can't stress enough, you got to make sure that the pins are correct on that lock cylinder when you put them in. If they're wrong, not only will this key not turn, but now you have that lock cylinder stuck in there because it's got the wrong pins, and you can't release it properly. All right, I hope this video was helpful, and if you got any questions or comments or feedback, drop them down below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll try to bring you guys some more content. Thanks for watching. Until next time.